What's going on, guys? TJ. Another video for y'all. I looked all over the place, couldn't find any videos or even any literature on splitting a Kioti. I got an NX series 5510 that's developed a pretty major rear main seal oil leak, and we started working on it today to split it, and I'm gonna show y'all as we go. We're gonna try to do it without taking the cab off. I think I could do it, but we'll give y'all some tips and tricks on the way that will make the job a lot easier for y'all. I've got the hood off. I've got the loader off. The loader's real easy. I'm sure you know how to get the loader off, but you pop your pins off, take all your hydraulic lines, get it off. We've already got the one bracket off on this side. We're gonna go ahead and get it off. That way we can see these bolts over here, make sure we can get to them without taking the cab off. So if you have a cab tractor, you've got to get your heater core hoses off, and your AC line is on this side, right up in there on the fuel tank. I think that's the only thing that you'll have to do different from a non-cab model. And so for any of the other ones, you'll have to get your fuel line, your fuel return. I'm sure that there's still a harness going back to the cab, which is right here. There's 3 hydraulic lines on this side, and there is 1 on the other side. It is right there. You'll unhook it on the other side of the fuel tank. Actually, the hookup's right here for it. So, and then you will also, on a cab or non-cab model, you'll have to take this plate off inside and undo the steering shaft. So we're going to start doing some of that stuff, and if I come across any problems, I'll check back in and give y'all some tips and tricks. I've already disconnected the battery. Don't forget to do that. One thing I forgot to mention in the other video was you got to get they call it the propeller shaft, front drive shaft. There's a roll pin on this side. You got to get out. I've already got it out with some punches, and then you got to collapse that cover. It's real hard, but get your 2 12mm bolts off of the cover first, and then collapse that thing together. And there is a snap ring you got to get off. Get that off. That's on the back side. Get that off and just kind of push it over toward this way. That way you can push that shaft back up in here so it'll release from the front side. Fixing to knock that out now. As you can see, mine was so full of oil. The very first sign of this thing leaking oil, the rear main was leaking into the case. It was coming up in this cover, and my first sign, you can see it right there, it was leaking out of the grease aren't fitting for the front drive shaft. That's the very first time I seen oil leaking, and I thought it was just the grease heating up and leaking. And then once it started leaking back here, I realized I had a rear main seal leak. If I had to guess, I'm gonna get this thing apart, and the rear main, the rubber is gonna be fine. I bet you the plate has unbolted from the back of the block, but we'll see when we get apart. All right, I wanted to give a little better update on how to get this front drive shaft, or propeller shaft, off, it's called. You'll need a drift punch. You'll need a set of ring pliers with a 90-degree tip on it, and you'll take these 2 12mm off on the front and the back. This will be the front side. Once you get them off, the shaft, the cover, it's kind of tough, but you will collapse it as much as you can, and you'll be left with a collar on the front and a collar on the rear. And the collar on the front will have that pin in there. You'll bust it out. That will allow you to slide this collar forward, and once you get the back one taken care of, the whole shaft will just fall out. So you'll move this collar all the way forward, and now we'll be on the back side, and This ring, snap ring, will normally be right here. You can see that little groove. If you can see the groove, it's normally right there, keeping this collar from sliding back. So you'll come up in there with your 90-degree thing. You'll probably have to rotate it to get it, the actual holes facing down. Put your 90-degree on there, get it, move it in, and then move this back, and the shaft will fall right on out. Be careful when you do, because it's heavy. On the AC lines for the cab, if you undo, there's a connect right here that straps them in place, and a connect right there that straps them in place. You can kind of see it. If you undo them, that one and that one, undo them, that gives you enough slack where you can kind of pull these things up out from that fuel tank, so you don't have to take the fuel tank off to unconnect them AC lines, and then you'll kind of pull them up through here. There may be some zip ties that you may have to undo to get you some slack to pull them up in there. All right, I'm here on the steering box in the cab. 3 10mm bolts will get the cover off, and I think is what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that bolt off right there and pull the U-joint off the shaft, and then I'm just going to go ahead and unbolt these 3 bolts right here. And well, first I'm going to get that line with the red one. There's 4 lines on the steering pump on the box. Total 3 of them will stay with the engine, and this one right here goes to the back. I think that's a return line. So I'm going to pull that one off, that one hydraulic line off. It's a flare fitting right there. I'm going to pull that bolt off right there, nut and bolt, and separate the U-joint from the shaft, and I'm going to unbolt these 3. And the whole bracket assembly, the pump and everything will stay with the engine side. And this plate, I'm actually going to be able to get to these bolts better back here as well. So there's 10 bell housing nuts and bolts total. Those have studs. I think those are the only ones with the studs, these top ones. There may be some on the bottom. I haven't looked that great yet, but there's 10 total. I do know that from looking at the parts diagrams. We're gonna get to pulling this apart. This is the last thing I got, and then I'll give y'all a total overview of everything that I've got off. So I got to get these off, the steering stuff off, and then it's to those it's to the bell housing bolts. But before I get to them bell housing bolts, I got to figure out what I'm gonna do as far as supports. I had some casters and stuff, but I'd have to bolt them to the bell housing. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and instead of bolting them to the bell housing where the front end loader is, because once I get this separated, I got to take this bell housing off when I get the flywheel off anyways. So I think I'm just going to use a jack with some big timbers on the oil pan, and some and a jack on the bottom as well. And I'm going to get my 4-wheeler winch out here and use it to separate apart. And I'm probably going to put something I thought about is I'm probably going to try to put some wedges, drive some wood wedges in here, because this front axle pivots. I think that's going to help keep it in place, locked in place. I looked around for some locks. Maybe some of the older tractors have a way that you could put some pins or bolts in there to lock them, but couldn't find anything on this one. So I'm just going to drive a couple wedges on each side, some wood wedges. So we'll see y'all here in a little bit. All right, on getting this line off, you can't get it to it from the other side. You're gonna have to move this spring line up over this and use a 7/8 wrench. I was able to use a 7/8 wrench, get in there, and kind of come in at an awkward angle like this, and grab as much meat on it as you can and break it loose. And that pump moves a pretty good bit. It's on them other bolts I want to break loose is on them rubber dampeners. So you have to it's going to want to move. Just do the best you can not to bust off of it, strip it. And on the inside here, something I missed is 2 12mm bolts right here. You got to bust them off. That way you can get that shaft to come up off. I've got it halfway off so far, the U-joint, but I think I'm going to go ahead and bust these off, quit trying to force it, and it'll let that pump move back a little bit, and I can get it all the way off and get all this out the way. All right, when you get to this one over here, you'll have to use a couple different brand wrenches. So like, I've already busted it loose, but I couldn't get it to turn enough to get another grip on it. I'll show you where I'm at. This is the wrench I busted it loose with, and it's right there. It's already hitting the bracket right there, and I can't get it on turning it this way. So I went and rounded up a couple different brand wrenches, got me a different one here to get a better angle on it, and that one fits on there in a different position so that I can get some more bite on it. I'm gonna put a cheater on it here because, like I said, it's still tight as heck. I can't even get it with my little flex head, and you're gonna need one of these. I'm not sure. It'll save you a bunch of time and a lot of curse words, I can tell you that, to get you a flex head ratchet wrench. Once you get it broke loose, a lot easier to turn in there. And you may be able to get in there with some swivels and stuff from the bottom side, and get it with a ratchet or an impact, but I don't have any real long extensions for a 1/2 inch drive, so and these things are dog tight. So I mean, I got to put a cheater wrench on there and it's bowing both of them over to get it to break loose. So see y'all in a minute. All right, guys, we made it. I want to tell y'all. So I got everything out. I've already got the bolts in, and I think I'm not even going to hook it up to the 4-wheeler. I think I'm just going to try to use the tires and walk it out in the jack. But I'm going to do a quick run around of everything. So don't forget about your steering box in here, the U-joint, the one hose. I've got all that right there, the wiring harness, the fuel return, the fuel suction, the wiring harness. You got 3 hydraulic lines here. If you don't cap this off, you're gonna drain your tank. After about 3 gallons of it flowing in a 5-gallon bucket, we said it's just draining the tank. We took a Ziploc bag, layered it over 4 times, hose clamped it. When you go to get these brackets off right here, make sure you got some help, because if you take these off first, last, we called it just in time, that bracket's gonna want to fold over and hit your glass. It'll break your glass. That thing is heavy. So we just set this one to the side with the front end loader connections on it, and we have plenty of room. So on this side, those 3 hydraulic lines, the 2 fuel lines, the heater core hose lines, which are right here. They're very easy to get to. Oh, lost a little fluid there. The AC lines on that side, I've got them up already. I went ahead and plugged all mine off. This was kind of a last minute decision. I did put the wood plugs in the axle to keep that thing from pivoting, but kind of last minute, I seen them hooks there. I said, heck, let's just for cheap insurance, let's put us a couple tie straps. I don't know how strong that bracket is, but I think it's gonna help it tie strapped it on both sides. All right, on this side, heater core hoses, that 1 hydraulic line right there, your prop shaft, we've already gone over that, and that's it. There's 10 bolts all around, and man, some of them things are tough. Just be patient. You can it's nothing to it. Just I've said a lot more cuss words, I can promise you, but just be patient. All right, I'm gonna set y'all up on a time lapse, and we're gonna see if we can't get this thing rolled forward and see where that thing's leaking from. I'm telling y'all, I bet you it's leaking from them bolts. I'm not much of a betting man, but I'd almost be willing to bet you it's just the bolts in the cover. But we're gonna see. Here's the setup underneath. I've got a wood block there with the with a 3-ton bottle jack. That's also a jack stand, so I can leave it. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do once I get this thing separated out. I'm gonna have to figure out how I can put some jack stands to hold the front up other than relying on the jack. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that yet, but wood blocks, ratchet straps. Let's see if we can get this thing tore apart. good thing I didn't bet y'all on it. By the way, when you go to take that, so this is bolted onto the back of the flywheel right here. When you break it apart, this is what you'll see. You'll have to bust these loose. This is a like a dampener. I made sure I marked it up. The flywheel's got an indentation on it that lines up with that hole right there, and all my bolts are tight. There's oil all over the place. I'm honestly not sure. I'm gonna pull the flywheel off. There's a couple caps in the back of the block. You can see one of them right there. One of them's for the camshaft. I ordered the caps, the cover, and the seal. So we'll see. Try to figure out where it's coming from. I'm gonna get this bell housing off, but it's not obvious to me right now that it would be the rubber or the thing. I hope it's not the block leaking right there, where the block separates. I really hope it ain't leaking right there, because that would be a chore. Crankshaft has to come out to fix that. So alright, we'll see. Alright, so I started taking these bell housing bolts off, and I haven't broke any of these loose yet other than these three, and I noticed the impact never impacted. Look at this. All of these are loose. Those are tight up top. Well, that one's loose. All these, I've already felt these. All these are tight, but I haven't bumped any of these loose. I hope that this thing hasn't rubbed a hole in the bottom of the block or something, or this was moving. I don't know. We'll see. One thing I forgot to mention is when you take that flywheel off, that joker's heavy. I guarantee it weighs at least 50-60 pounds, so be careful with it. Alright, the caps seem to be good, but there's oil pretty high. There's oil in there, and there, all the way up here. I'm kind of dumbfounded at this point where exactly it's leaking from for it to get up that high, because when I pulled this off, this is up right here, and the rear main's all in here. There's oil all the way up here. So I'm not so sure it could get slung up in there. I don't know. So there's a pretty weird lip where the rear main seal rides. I can't feel it with my finger, but I think it's raised. So that's what it looked like before. I got some real non-abrasive, not very aggressive Scotch-Brite, and I've already kind of cleaned it right here. When you're doing this, if you're using a fine sandpaper or Scotch-Brite or whatever, you want to go with the way that the seal rides, which is this way. If you try to go back and forth this way, you're going to make scratch marks, and that's just going to eat that seal up faster. Whereas if it does have a scratch mark, it's going the same direction that the seal's moving. So always go this way, not crossways. I'm going to clean all this up, and once it gets clean, we'll start looking at getting it all back together. Alright, after a lot of research and thinking, it was eating me up. It didn't look like it was pouring out that seal to me, like as much oil as I was using. I mean, give you an idea, I bush hogged for 8 hours, and I used probably a gallon of oil. Kept stopping every couple of hours, checking it and having to add some. It was just constantly dripping. And I did not see, total failure out of this seal. I mean, it is pretty loose. It slips on there, but it was just eating me up, not knowing that I had a feeling it wasn't coming out that seal. So I told y'all that the bell housing bolts, all of them were hand tight, with the exception of these two right here, these top two. After I got to looking, I'm like, I don't remember two bolts being that close. So I started looking in that hole right there, and I don't know if you can see this, but that is a main oil galley. You see the hole right there? So as what had happened was, you can see where that was sitting. You can see that hole right there. That's where that was sitting. Now I haven't taken no plug out of this thing. There's supposed to be a plug. I'm going to show y'all parts diagrams, and from the service manual, you can see the hole coming in right there. There's supposed to be a plug in here, and Daydong did not do that in the factory, and that bell housing, them bell housing bolts had worked themselves loose, and that thing started pouring oil, and that's where the oil was coming from. This could be a blessing in disguise, because had that had a plug in it, it wouldn't have been pouring oil like it would have, and them bolts being loose on that bell housing could have really caused disaster. I mean, that holds the tractor together. I could have been pushing or pulling on something, and this thing could have broken in half because of those loose bell housing bolts. So this could be a blessing in disguise. I'm gonna Loctite all these. I'm still gonna change the seal, of course, but I'm gonna find me a plug that fits in there. It's gonna be a metric plug. I may have to make one with a slotted screw, and actually it may be a I'm not sure. That metric bolt that fits right there won't fit in it. So I'm gonna have to figure out what size thread that is, or order one from Kioti and put a plug in there. There's also supposed to be one, hopefully it's there in the front, but I've never had any oil pressures in this. Even with that thing pouring out oil, the oil pressure light never came on. But I think we can say this one is we can figure out what the problem was with here. When I seen that seal, I knew that much oil couldn't have been coming from that seal. But I'm gonna put a plug in there, and I'm gonna Loctite them bolts, and hopefully we don't have any problems. Or not put a plug in there, and I know if this thing goes pouring oil again, these bell housing bolts have came loose. I haven't made a decision yet, because I'm telling you, if this thing wouldn't have been pouring oil and we would have kept working it hard, them bolts were very loose. We'd have had a problem on our hands. So I haven't made up my mind what I want to do yet.